All right. Welcome to another episode of the I Am Liberty podcast. Super honored to be joined by Jimmy Rex, podcaster, entrepreneur, author, and overall just an awesome dude. How are you doing, Jimmy?
Man, it's a pleasure to be on. I love the name of your podcast. It's one of those things I think that in another life I was one of the Sons of Liberty. I always joke. I love that whole story and all those guys, and so it's a pleasure to be here, man.
So I just want to dive right into that. That's actually really cool.
Sounds
Sons
cool.
of Liberty in another life. That's kind of very Patton-esque. I don't know if you know that about General Patton, but he believed that he was a general in previous wars prior to World War II. So very, very Patton-esque. So what do you mean, Sons of Liberty in a previous life? Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, the guys that really started the Revolutionary War, there's a TV series on it or whatever. I mean, if you can just study it, but they called themselves the Sons of Liberty. And basically these dudes were troublemakers in all the best ways. And they just valued freedom, kind of like today you see, with everything going on. And you kind of can see the people that truly are ready to fight for freedom. And to me, I try to surround myself with those people. I think that's in my blood. And so, the word liberty has a lot of meaning to me. I've literally studied them in depth. A couple of my heroes are part of that group.
Wow. All right. You said a lot of things there. Troublemakers, I think, stuck out to me because I do feel like that's very, very American, very, very true to what we are as people, as Americans, is we're not necessarily troublemakers, but not afraid to bend the norm as is what's perceived as the norm. So that's really cool that you say that liberty's in your blood, right? I mean,
yeah, well, it's troublemaker in all the best ways, right? To me, you got to ask more questions. You got to question life. You got to question everything. And the people that are willing to question, the people are willing to go, wait, hold on, how come this is being done this way? They're the people that changed the world. And the guy that got sick of the horse, taking a shit on the road was the guy that was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And next thing you know, we got cars, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Or the guy that was, I really wish I could make a phone call, but I have to be at my house because that's the only place my phone's at. All of a sudden, voila, the cell phone. It's the guy that's willing, or the woman that's willing to question things that really makes change. And that's the same as, with policy or freedom, all these different things, whatever it might be. And so for me, I always come from a place of curiosity. And so I think that makes you seem like a troublemaker. Like I know when I was in school and the teacher would say something and I'd be like, that doesn't sound right. And I'd just question it. And I remember when I was a missionary, which you were taught, you just obey the rules. That is not to be questioned. And I remember one time the mission president came up with this really weird, I'm in Mexico and it's 110 degrees during the day. It's 90 at night. And he comes up with this new rule that we weren't allowed to wear shorts in the house. And I'm like, that just makes no sense. That's a dumb rule. And everybody just goes with it. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to question this one. So I'm like, President, no offense, but it's a terrible rule. I was like, please explain your logic because it's 90 degrees in the house and, we need to have shorts on. He said, well, I went to some of the elders' house and, listen to this and you're not familiar, Mormon people, we wear garments underneath our clothes and it's not supposed to be shown. And so at that time, he said, I went to a couple houses and some of the people's garments were hanging out the bottom of their shorts. And so I just made a rule, no more shorts. I said, well, why don't you just make a rule, no letting your garments hang outside your shorts? That to me seems like a much better rule. And he's like, man, good point. And I explained to him how hot it was and everything, and he changed the rule. And so it was like, when I say troublemaker, I think it's more just you're willing to challenge authority, you're willing to question things that don't feel right. That's right now. It's I don't know where this is all going, but a lot of things don't feel right. And I think it's important to at least question it. Whether you don't have to have definite answers. I don't know what the answers are to what's going on, but there's things worth questioning right now. And I think that's what somebody like me that values, again, those qualities is just willing to do.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much more we can get into on that, and I guess we'll table that for now because I want to just touch briefly on where we're at. So we're in Rookery Studios. Is that what it's called?
That is, yeah. Okay. When I was in college, I came across the word rookery, and it's a place where penguins go to mate. And I just thought that was the funniest word, and I always wanted to start something I was going to do like a bakery or something that had that name. But then when I had the podcast studio, I was like, it's the perfect name. And so I really enjoy it.
Oh, that explains the penguin on the front door.
That's right.
That explains the penguin, the large penguin on the wall there when you walk in. So, and I was going to ask you about the name of it. So now we have a little background.
There it is. Yeah. It's literally I just thought it was funny when I came across the word.
I thought it had something to do with like chess, like
okay, with the rook and
yeah, but I didn't quite understand the penguin. So now we've got the background on that, and it's here in Orem, Utah, and it's open to anybody to come record, right?
Yeah. So essentially, I've been doing my podcast actually this Thanksgiving will be 4 years, and so I've been doing it for a while now, and I've learned a lot of things doing my own podcast. I'm at 330 episodes or something. And I've learned the right mics, the right equipment, the right audio and acoustics. And so I finally, I had this space. We moved my real estate office to a bigger building and bought a new building last year, or during the beginning of the pandemic, actually 2 years ago. And so I had this space, and I was like, what do I want to use it for? And I always need a podcast studio. And so I just formed it into that. And it was like, well, we might as well, open it up to other people. Because I remember when you're starting out, I tried to hire 2 kids to like video and audio every episode, and honestly, things get messed up. And then, you're using mics, but it's just tricky. And sometimes you get too much echo in the room, or you don't have the right room to record the podcast. And it really is sad when you get a really cool podcast, but the audio is not that good. And so for me, it was like, well, if I can help people, so we basically do it for everybody. They come in. We set up everything for them. All they do is like you're doing today. I sit down with the guest. They say start. You roll into it, and everything gets done for you. So video and audio.
Awesome. Yeah. And it seems like a perfect setup. I just, kind of turn the microphone on in my home and kind of record people or just do like an online Zoom. And so, yeah, I wanted to come check it out. You'd posted about it on your Instagram. So it's pretty sweet. And you've got 3 separate rooms so people can do audio visual, and you do all the hosting and everything and editing and like.
Yeah, all done for you. Cause so many people want to do a podcast. I was talking to Tim Ferriss one time, and he had the #1 podcast in the country at the time. And I told him, I think I was on episode like 90 or something at the time. And I was talking to him, and he goes, wow, that's really good. He said, I think it was a crazy number. It was like 98% of podcasts don't go over 60 episodes. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, people it's too much work. And so what we've tried to do is, so many people want their voice to be heard. They want to do a podcast, but it's just too much work. And so if we can take all the parts of it that suck and do it for you, and keep it honestly very reasonable on the price, it's much cheaper than buying it all yourself anyway and doing all the editing yourself. And so like when you really break it down, we just took all the parts of it that people don't like, and then all of a sudden it's just really fun. Because podcast, nothing's changed my life more than my podcast, being honest. Like the opportunity to meet different guests, to meet different people, to share messages, and people get to know me. It's like, I had this person reached out to me yesterday, this lady that lives in Vegas, never met her, don't even know what she looks like. And she's like, hey, I've been so hesitant to ever do anything with real estate, but I just trust you. I've been listening to your podcast for the last few years. I don't even know who this lady is. But my point is, it gives you an opportunity for people to kind of get a glimpse of who you are and what you are all about. And so I think everybody should have a podcast. It's just such a great way to share a message and get your word out there of who you are, and a great way to network and meet people. So yeah, I'm a huge advocate of the space. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to create this studio as well, because I have so many friends that I think have been wanting to get into this space, but they just don't know where to start.
Yeah, and this is just, I wasn't sure if I needed to bring anything, and I didn't. I just kind of showed up, and you do have everything here.
Yeah, we'll make that more clear. That's good. That's good marketing messaging.
So yeah, you just show up, and I'm glad that you agreed to do this interview. So I was pretty excited about this. I do have, a question that was, kind of sent your way. So you mentioned that, I guess this is like, you've used the podcast for just meeting people, like I guess your podcast. So you've met some great people. I'm obviously sitting down here, super excited about that. Would you consider yourself an influencer as well, just on Instagram and all that?
The word influencer obviously is just one of those words, right? But yeah. I'll say this, man, I very intentionally decided, you know what? I have taken so much coaching and training. I've worked so hard. I've gone through so many different things in my life. I want to help other people. And I would talk to people, and people would just come to me. I was the person people would come to. And I'm like, man, I have a lot of information to share. And so I said, you know what? I need to, once I saw like an actual influencer, how much money they were making and how much reach they had, I was like, holy shit, I need to be a part of this. And so I very intentionally built up what I was doing. That's when I started writing the book. That's when I started the podcast. That's when I started building my Instagram very intentionally, right? And doing some different things. That's when I started with my coaching courses and started letting people know I was for hire to speak, because I wanted to get my message out there. And it's been really cool because, I mean, yeah, I get multiple messages every single day, people that found my book or my podcast or whatever it was, and you're able to, you know, make a little bit of a difference. And so, yeah, I guess you can say the word influencer again, but what I think is I've built a platform that allows me to help a lot of people now. And I think when, you know, I talked about this on a podcast, my own podcast the other day, but I used to volunteer for like the Big Brother, Big Sister program, and loved doing it. But there was only one kid, and I always was like, God, I need to be affecting more people here. So I started coaching high school baseball. And I got into, you know, coaching high school baseball. And then it was like, I saw the influence I could help with these kids. But then I was kind of like, you know what, like there's still like, I need to reach more people. And so I've just tried to expand my voice, share my message. I think we live in a world now where there's so many negative messages. There's so many people that are sharing a message that isn't a good message. So for those, you know, somebody like myself that I think I've learned some things and have been able to figure some stuff out. Yeah, I want to get as big of a microphone as I can and share that message with as many people as possible.
Yeah, and I definitely think you're doing, I can't remember at what point I stumbled across your Instagram, and then I started listening to your podcast, and then I bought your book actually in preparation for this. I know you had a book before that, but I wanted to just kind of get ready for this interview. And so there's so much that I guess it seems like it started with the podcast, then your book and all that. It seemed like it kind of all came together around the same time. Was that?
Yeah, it was all kind of like, I launched, you know, I found a key hire because I knew I wanted to do like this coaching funnel for real estate agents, and I wanted to do the podcast, and I wanted to do the Instagram stuff, and I didn't know how to do any of it. And I was able to find a guy, his name's Brett, and hired him, and he told me he knew how to do it all. I later found out he just wanted to work with me, so he told me that, but he did learn it, and I couldn't tell the difference in his defense. So, but that really helped catapult me, because it's one of those things that I wasn't able to, I mean, the amount of stuff I was doing at once, there's no way I could have done it without him, so.
Yeah. Well, and so you know, it was easy to respond to your Instagram message and say, hey, Rookery Studios, I just started a podcast literally like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then you posted that, and I was like, I would love to just sit down in the podcast. I wasn't sure if you were going to be available for an interview. And so I'm glad you made time for it. I'm not sure.
It was the name of your podcast is why, to be honest, I was like, yeah, I'll go on that podcast. I know everything I need to know about this.
Well, and that's kind of an honor because, well, in a lot of ways, I guess I'm just trying to talk to people who I feel like I would like to emulate, or who emulate liberty or live lives of liberty. And I feel like you do that in so many different ways. There's so much we can cover, from your book to your coaching to, your real estate business and just like everything else in between, your friendships, I'm sure you're part of some masterminds and investment groups. I mean, there's so much that we can cover. But I guess I'll start with the book, because there's a theme in the book, and the name of the book, for anybody who's listening, and I know you said pretend like nobody's listening, but I kind of failed on that. The name of the book is, I guess it's You End Up Where You're Headed, right?
Yeah, You End Up Where You're Heading, and then the subtitle is The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of my friends wanted me to ask you, when you're looking at investments, what do you do to assess risks? And so, but I want to make that kind of a broader in question, because risk is just such an inherent part of our existence. And I feel like if we're living lives, safe lives, if we're kind of cowering in corners and too afraid to get in the arena, if you will, then sure, we're maybe mitigating risks, but we're also not living life fully. And again, just kind of going back to how I feel like you live your life and how it's a life of liberty. I feel like you maybe have a risk tolerance that if you weren't born with it, maybe you developed it. And so if you can do me a huge favor and just talk to me about how you assess risk in your investments, as well as just kind of in life in general.
Yeah, no, it's actually a really good question. And got a pretty good answer, I think, for it. But so Tony Robbins talks about, he says, the quality of your life will be directly proportionate to the amount of uncertainty you're willing to have. So the more certainty you need, the less risk you're willing to take, the less quality of life you're going to have. And so just knowing that, right, you say, okay, well then how do I add more uncertainty to my life? How do I add more risk? And so for me, I think it came from you do stuff, right? Because I did a lot of things that failed. Like that's the part of my story that's so funny. Like is I was trying so many things and I was falling on my ass one after another. And what happens is you fail and you realize like, oh, my worst case scenario is pretty good here. Like I didn't die. Friends still think I'm pretty cool. Like I took a risk that nobody else would have taken. And was it a failure or was it not? And as you do that, it kind of allows you to kind of push it a little bit more. And so I think it's something you develop. I think as you take risks more and more, it helps you develop a mindset where you realize that the risk is, a fun part of the adventure, that the failure only comes if you don't do it. And so for me, when I was younger, for example, I took some bad risks. I opened a company that I took on $120,000 of debt from the bank to open this company when I was 22 years old, a meat company. Lost my ass. Business partner ended up stealing all my money, and I ended up having to pay that off. Then I was very aggressive in the real estate game. I bought 13 real estate properties by the time I was 26 years old. Back then you could put nothing down, so I just kept buying houses, and ended up losing a lot of money as well when the market tanked, and got stuck with a lot of debt again that I had to pay off. And I mean, it was hard. Like looking back, I would not want to do it again, but even in those moments, I was happy. Like I was working hard, I was learning, I was falling on my face and getting back up. And I just always knew I was going to be somebody. I just figured, like, all right, it's taking me longer than I thought to get there, And so as you do those things though, and you fall and you get back up and you're like, yeah, I'm still good. I'm still alive. And so I think that allows you to have more and more risk. And then you start looking into like what's really risky. And this is the part that changed my life. Like I swim with tiger sharks, and I've ran with the bulls, and I've bungee jumped the 750-foot bungee, one of the biggest in the world in Africa. I've slept in the middle of the bush forest 200 yards from lions. Like I've done a lot of what look like really risky things. But what I've done is I'm actually super smart about it, is I've looked at the real data and I let that really make the outcome. Like it's actually not risky to swim with tiger sharks if you do it the right way. It is, but it isn't. It's, the bungee jump, nobody's dying bungee jumping. Like I did for, my birthday, I took 30 of my buddies to Moab, and we did this rope swing. Well, I didn't hire some doofus. I've hired the only guy that I would ever hire to do this, or partnered with, whatever. And he, did this for me and set it up, and it was the safest thing you've ever seen. We jumped off, and it was like, yeah, everybody was, of course, was going to be fine. It has the appearance of like this crazy risk, but the reality is the data proves otherwise. And that's why, like, even with my response to coronavirus and how this thing's all gone down, like I'm just a logical person. I look at it and like, okay, I don't actually have any risk here. Like there is much more risky for people to be locked in their homes. It's much more risky for kids to have to wear a mask, to what this does to them long term, than it is to actually be exposed to COVID. And like, even if you get it, the odds of you dying from it, and if you actually look at the data, it's the same as, it's the reason I'm willing to go hike with gorillas in Uganda up in the mountains, because it's not actually a problem. Like, and so, and as you do those things, because it is intimidating. I mean, you see the tiger shark, coming in from the deep blue. It looks like a minibus coming at you. And you're like, there's a moment of like, oh shit, what have I done? Why am I here? But then you have the experience, and it's one of the most beautiful, peaceful, majestic experiences of your life. And you're sitting there with that shark, and you're sharing energy, and there's no cage. I mean, it's you and him. They're in the water, and you're like, your eyes meet, and you're like, this shark is feeling me, and it's not threatened. I'm not threatened. And it's the most beautiful connection. Same thing with, when you jump off that cliff and you feel, oh my gosh, I am alive. Like you feel this complete rush of like, oh, I'm simulating the feeling of jumping to my death. And then the rope catches you 15 feet from the ground, and you swing through this gully, and you're just the most majestic thing you've ever seen. And it's like, all of a sudden you realize that, those rewards that come by pushing past the fear. And same thing in business, like, and people are like, man, how do you dare to buy 30 houses? What if the market turns? It's like, well, I'm not an idiot. I've learned how to do that the right way. But also, like, it's all good. Like if I lose everything, I'll just make it back. Like, and you get that by having experience, and then you have confidence in yourself. And the more you do these things, the more confident you become. My whole coaching program that I've set up is designed, like one of the major themes of my program is to help guys break through whatever limiting belief they have or whatever's holding them back. They're living this life where they're trying to play it safe still. And ultimately it comes down to, like, on our deathbeds, nobody regrets the things they did. Nobody's gonna be like, oh man, if I just hadn't gone to all those countries and visited them, you know, like my life would have been better. Or like if I hadn't taken all those risks, my life would have been better. No, like, you know, the majority of the time, we're at the end of the day, we're happy that we risked whatever it was. And so I'm trying to do things like, you know, that's the program. Every 3 months we go do something crazy. We, you know, we go bungee jump off a helicopter, or we go cliff jumping on Havasupai Falls, or we go run with the bulls. We're going to do all these different things. And it's all designed because once you have that breakthrough, once you can push, I guess, your parameter of where you're comfortable, you really open up your life to so many more things you can do, and you can go for it in every other aspect of life. And I think that, to me, is one of the most important lessons a person can get on this earth. And so the more you can push yourself, the more you can push into the uncomfortability, like Tony Robbins says, the higher quality of life you're going to have.
Yeah. Wow. And I really like how you said the reality is, so you look at the risks, you kind of look at the data, and I mean, in a lot of ways, the data reflects reality. And if we're running around scared and emotional about our decisions, or, you know, trying to hide from a virus that you're most likely to survive, and just, or, you know, for instance, running with the bulls, I don't even know what that's like, but that sounds kind of fun. Also really scary. And I guess you looked at the data and you were like, all right, well, most
I mean, I don't want to die. I love my life, but I don't.
But there's something about that, though, right? There's something about, like, facing mortality.
Totally, yeah.
Like
That's when you feel alive, man. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is living.
700 plus feet, like bungee jumping. Like I mean, so what? For like 5 seconds, you're like, I am. Literally...
Yeah, you got time to think about what you've done. You know, you're like, oh, and then you go all the way up.
I hope the rope doesn't break.
And then you go all the way back down again, and you pretty much do it twice because it basically shoots you all the way back up. But
shoots you back up, and then you're doing
pretty
it
awesome, though, man. You get done with that, and you're just like, wow.
So are you just hoping the rope? Because that's always my question about bungee jumping. Is like, you hope the rope doesn't like wrap around your neck on the way back down. Like, how do you mitigate that?
No, because that's the problem. Is so there's actually a story. One of my mentors,
bungee jumping lesson, I guess.
My mentor told me a story one time. No, and that's the problem that a lot of people have is they focus on what can go wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And I focus on what can go right.
Yeah.
Like, no, bungee jump's not going to wrap around my neck and pop my head off. If it does, it does. There we go. Keep filming. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to happen. But
you're not doing what
how did Jimmy die? You're not going to believe this, but he was bungee jumping in Africa. Okay, I'm already believing this, but go ahead. Well, the rope wrapped around his head and there he went, you know?
Got it on video.
I don't know. I can think of worse ways to go, I guess. But no, my point is, like, people don't just die doing this stuff. And so it's like, I don't think of what can go wrong. I always think of what can go right. Like, how is this going to make me feel? Well, this is part of just living an extraordinary life. And so, but where people get screwed up is they do that, though. They think about what can go wrong. Like, immediately their mind goes to, oh my gosh, what if this? Well, I don't ever focus on that. I've researched, like, the place I picked, they've been in business for like 20 years. They're doing 200 jumps a day. I Googled it. Nobody's died yet. So I'm like, okay, clearly these guys have some things dialed in. 12,000 people have jumped off this bridge. Pretty sure the bungee's fine. And then I looked, and the whole thing was very professional. The ropes looked solid. Yeah, I double checked them, putting the harness on me, and voila, you're good to go.
Voila. All right. Well, and we have, I didn't learn much from my time in the military, but one of the things that always stuck with me was you accept risk when benefits outweigh the cost. So it's like a cost-benefit analysis, right? It's just and
risk reward, right?
Yeah, risk reward. And so sounds like that's something that you've espoused and you've really taken on in your life. Something that I think of when, going back to how we started the conversation with the troublemakers and being a son of the Revolution or Liberty. I'll have to look that up. I know you're a
Sons
big guy.
of Liberty, yeah.
Sons of Liberty. I know you're a big history buff as well. That's kind of mentioned in your book. And you say go to the sites. Don't just learn about history, but actually go to where history happened. And I think you gain an appreciation for things when that does happen.
Yeah, one of the first beers I ever had was in the tavern where the Sons of Liberty used to meet in Boston, actually. actually.
Yes.
I had to have a beer there. Samuel Adams,
You
of
shared
course.
a beer with them, like sitting there in the same tavern.
Exactly.
As them. That's amazing. That's amazing. And so you also mentioned your coaching program, and this is, I guess, from your book, and I think the name of your coaching program is from your book, and you're teaching individuals, or I guess men and women, or just
it's a men's group. Yeah, it's just men.
Okay, so it's a men's group, and you're essentially teaching them to overcome those limiting beliefs and overcome whatever is holding them back in their minds. And it's called We Are They.
We Are the They.
We Are the They. Okay.
Yeah. So that name comes. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity about 6-7 years ago to start. It was 5 or 6 years ago, I guess, to go undercover with Operation Underground Railroad, and I would go on ops. I've been on a dozen ops with them now. And after one of the ops a couple of years ago, I was on the way home with the girl I was dating, and I was telling her all about it. It was this amazing adventure we'd been on. Like we, helped rescue like 20 girls, and we arrested these really bad guys. And I was telling her the story, but it was probably the scariest one we ever had. I mean, there was a lot of things that were pretty intense about this particular op. And she pulls over the car, and I think this was the 3rd or 4th op I'd been on at the time. And she's like, "Hey, like, I actually don't like this. I don't want you to go do it anymore. It's, it's super scary and super dangerous." And I was like, "I know, but this is part of like who I am now. Like this is going to be, part of my mission for my life." She goes, "I know, but like, it's just not a great environment. It's just scary. Like, why can't they just go do it?" And without even thinking, I said, "Well, there is no they. We are the they." And when I said that, I was like, "Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's something.
There's no one else coming to do this.
Nobody else is going to, like, they should do something about it. They need to fix this." People say that stuff all the time. It's like, there is no they. Like, be the they. And so my entire life motto is We Are the They, and that's the name of the coaching group as well. And yeah, it's designed, for those things, as well as just, I've basically going to take all the best information from all the best coaches, mentors, trainers I've had, and help share it with the other people that are, the men in this group. And then also a big part of it is the brotherhood. It's the number one thing that people ask me on Instagram is, how do I find a group of friends like you have? And so I'm very good at, curating these experiences where men can really bond and like become close and have that brotherhood. And so that's a big part of what I'm putting together as well.
And is it across the states, or is it limited to Utah? Is it?
Yeah, no, it's about half the group's from Utah, about half's outside.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, This first one, obviously a lot of people just know me, signed up. And so, we had 50 spots, and I was hoping to fill it. Obviously, you don't know when you launch something, you put your heart into it, you hope people will take to it. And the first day we opened it, we had 140 people apply, and I had to shut it down after one day. So. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was pretty awesome, man. I'm pretty stoked.
So you've got the 140, and then it'll open back up and down the road, or?
No. So I mean, I picked 50 out of those 140. Oh, wow. So yeah. Okay. So for me to do what I'm trying to do here with the brotherhood, it is, it's not a cheap course. So I wanted to make sure I had the right 50 people, and so I went through and we just talked to a few of the people to make sure it was the right fit, and then I spent about 2 days picking the 50 out of 140.
Wow.
Yeah, down the road, I don't know. I might be the only time I ever do it. I might open it up to the masses. I might change the pricing and go bigger. I don't know exactly. So I'm just going to do it the best I can for this next little bit, and really provide as much value as possible. And then I think it'll direct itself.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be life-changing for those 50 individuals, and then think about the impact that they're going to have on the people in their lives, and then it'll
and that's where it gets fun, It's like these are leaders in their community. These are men that have families. These are guys that are already kicking butt at life. It's just we're just going to help them get to the next level, and just the same things that I did. So in doing so, yeah. Yeah.
So I guess. There's a lot to liberty, and I guess there's a lot to how we live our lives and how we choose who we associate with, and how we choose our brotherhoods, how we choose our tribes. But I feel like one of the things that you like to focus on, just listening to you, kind of following you for a little bit, we actually had an exchange on Instagram once where you had given advice to a missionary who was reaching out to you for advice, and like, hey, I'm about to go on a mission. Like, what is the one thing that is important for me to know before I go out on my mission? And so you went on a mission. You kind of had that experience. You were LDS, but we were talking about beer too, so maybe there was there's a path away.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. I no longer associate myself with any religion, but I have a lot of gratitude and love for the heritage that I have in that religion. So.
Yeah, and what I thought was pretty profound about the advice that you gave him, which I could have used on my mission a little bit more, and just in life in general, was do you remember that?
Yeah,
text?
just love the people, man.
Yeah. That's the whole thing, right? That's the whole reason that you're out there is you're out there for love. You want them to find light, and so you're sharing a message that has brought you love, has brought you light, and that's like, you know, what it seems like that's what you're continuing to do as you live in gratitude, as you influence these people, or as you launch your coaching program. So, and I guess what I'd like to know is what are your thoughts on just like how to essentially, I don't know, just, so you talked about limiting beliefs. We've talked about liberty a little bit. But what would be your advice on how to live a life more with love, with gratitude, with liberty? Like what is it that you found has been beneficial for you in that?
I think it's important to realize those are verbs.
Verbs.
Yeah, those are things we do.
Okay.
Like we love, we share gratitude, we choose liberty. So love especially, I think that's one of the things that, and there's one of my favorite sayings is whatever you want more of, give it away. So if you want more money, give it away. If you want more love, give it away. Like give love and you'll get it in return. If you are broke and you're like, I don't have any money, well, give away money. And all of a sudden, just watch what happens. Because what happens is the universe all of a sudden goes, oh, this dude doesn't see this stuff as scarce. If I'm giving away money, even if I don't have much, then I'm telling the universe, like, yeah, I'll give it away because I know I'll get more back. And when I say give it away, don't just start running around handing your money out to whoever, but like do service, you give it away, you leave a larger tip, whatever that looks like, right? And as you do that, and it's got to hurt. Like you should give enough money that it hurts. And if it hurts, you're giving enough away. That's a good way to know. And if you're just like, whatever, $100, $5, whatever you're at in your life, like whatever doesn't hurt, it's not going to change you. But when you do that, the universe goes, yeah, he doesn't see money as scarce. So you abundantly get blessed with more money. If you do the same thing with love, like it's so funny. We think there's like a limited amount of love. Like I can only love so many people. No, you can't. Like the more love you give out, the more you get in return. And so I'm always just trying to share love. And when I'm not at my best, I like violate my own rule, right? Or whatever. And if I'm mean to somebody or whatever else, I try to correct it or fix it. But most of the time I'm coming from this place of love. And when you do that, that's what gets reciprocated back to you. And then, and the opposite is true too. Like if other people are coming with negative energies or negative, emotions, negative verbs, you just block them. You just cut that out, and I learned not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I just learned like, you don't even have to respond to those things. Like negative things don't deserve a response from you. But if somebody shares love with me or in some way, like reaches out, like every person that reaches out to me, and it's several a day, I respond to every time. Like when you reached out, I respond pretty much right away because I can appreciate that these people are sharing that love. Like they're sharing an emotion with me that's a positive thing. And so of course I'm going to reciprocate that back.
Yeah. Wow. So I love how you said that. Those are verbs, because the whole, like the name of the podcast is I Am Liberty, right? And what I think about that is I believe it's an affirmation, and I've said this before in previous episodes, if we're doing affirmations, just say like, I am love, I am joy, I am peace, all that stuff. If we're not acting, then it's just wishful thinking. It's just like we're lying to ourselves. And so I feel like that is like a key takeaway in anything that we do. If we want more of it, we have to give that. We have to do something about it. And so that's a pretty profound message, I think. And it's funny because we met for the first time at one of your what was it, the $100 dinner club or something? I didn't realize what it was. I didn't realize that I was giving away $100 when I showed up, and so I'm like, ouch,
You just thought we were all going to dinner.
Yeah, I thought you guys were going to dinner, like it was a cool networking thing. And so, but then I show up and you were giving away, like each person there was giving away $100 in tips, and so it ended up being like, and then you started the $1,000 dinner club, and so you actually live live what you teach in a lot of ways. And so, but how much money would you say you've given away in those like $100 and $1,000? Have you,
like, as a group,
counted it? Yeah. Have you counted it all? I know.
No, I mean, we did like 30 something weeks in a row. I know that. And we've done $3,000 or $4,000 tip clubs. Those ones are easier to remember. I mean, we've probably given away close to 200 grand, I bet, in tips between us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool.
And I mean, I think you probably changed some lives. At least gave some people some buffers.
Well, what's been cool is like not only our group; those are just ones that we did, but like there's been hundreds of offshoots of people that did it as well. And it's not like this. I don't need the grand number. Isn't what I focus on. What I think about is that somewhere in Wisconsin last month, some random waitress that my life would have never connected with got a $100 tip because somebody saw it on either mine or one of the people that was influenced by my dinner club that we were leaving the $100 tips, and they decided to just leave $100 tip, and all of a sudden some single mom, like I said, in Sarasota, Florida, or wherever it might have been, all of a sudden went home and just had that much better of a day and got a $100 tip. And that's the thing, because I know there's been thousands of those situations, and that's the part to me that is super cool and the most exciting is I know those things have happened all over, and that's where we get to create a real change. Each person that maybe one of those people, I don't know, maybe they just needed to know someone loved them, and all of a sudden they get a $100 tip, or maybe they needed to know that somebody was caring, and all of a sudden some random stranger leaves them a $100 tip. And to me, that was the beauty of the whole thing, and is the beauty of the whole thing. It keeps going. To this day, probably a couple times a week, I'll get DMs of people leaving a $100 tip, and I don't even know who a lot of these people are, but I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so you have that. You said you created that, and you created it out of a circumstance where these businesses had been shut down for whatever reasons they were shut down, and in a very un-American way, right? Because these small businesses, they're supposed to be able to operate. And so you saw a need and you created something where these waitresses and these waiters who were maybe struggling during these hard times because things were shut down, you created something that contributed to their lives in a positive way.
Yeah, well, and what's cool, like, you asked earlier about being an influencer. Like, I actually stole the idea from another friend of mine. Like, he did it at this breakfast, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. I'm like crying as I'm
friend.
Yeah, his name's Rob, and I don't know where he got it from, but the point was I'm watching this and I'm just like getting choked up. I'm like, shit, I can do this. Like, I'm gonna do this every week. And that's how it started. Like, it was just me watching this video going, that's awesome, I'm gonna do that.
Well, and you're getting groups of people together in the middle of a pandemic, air quotes, right?
Yeah,
where you're not supposed to gather in groups.
Yeah, that was kind of the part of the beauty of it too, is like I have a lot of thought went into it once I decided, like, oh, this is something, like, I could make this cool. And part of it was, it's very hard to get angry at the people getting together when they're doing it to leave a couple $1,000 to a waitress or whatever,
Yeah, well, and so that's very emblematic again of that we are the they.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So you didn't wait for anybody to do it.
Exactly.
And so I guess we're probably getting pretty close to an hour, and I know you've got other things that you've got to get to.
You're good.
But I guess, because what I think of when I think of, like, we are the they, we are the people who are taking action. We're maybe the troublemakers, the rule breakers. We're not afraid. We don't need anybody's permission to do something, right? We're just gonna do it, like, hell or high water. We're fucking going, and we're gonna learn along the way. So what would you say is maybe like a key bit of advice for somebody who is maybe afraid to take that first step, maybe has those limiting beliefs, they've been hurt in the past, they're struggling, and they don't want to put themselves out there again? Like, what is a good method to live by or belief to adopt so that they can just go ahead and take that fucking action and go?
Yeah, I mean, do something every day that makes you a little uncomfortable. That's it. A lot of people talk about the cold shower, like hasn't been my thing yet, but if that makes you uncomfortable, like, rock yourself out. Like, maybe it's making that call that, like, or that sales call that you need to make or whatever. I just, it's really important to do something every day that makes you uncomfortable. And if you're willing to do that, you'll grow and you'll grow and you'll grow. I remember when I was in college, I had a rule. If I saw a pretty woman, a pretty girl, I had a rule. I had to go talk to her. It wasn't optional. It's like I had to go meet her. And I did this for years. And I met every attractive girl in town, basically. And a lot of times my ass got denied really hard. Like, I fell on my face. But guess what? A few of them said yes. And I ended up, long story short, having a lot of, attractive people around me, and then really cool people to hang out with. And, but that rejection, I never took it personal. It was just like, I'd go up and I mean, so many times my friends loved me for it. They called me the initiator because I was always starting these conversations, and it was scary for me too. It got less scary, but like, because you learn what to say and you learn how to get over it. Like I remember one time I was hitting on this girl and she's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, like I'm engaged." And I was like, "Dang it." I was like, "Do you have a sister that looks exactly like you?" And you say that, and then she's laughing her head out. She's like, "You're actually funny. I should introduce you to my friends." You know what I mean? Like you learn what to say. So it's no longer feeling rejected. You're just having fun with it. And it's like we put so much pressure on ourselves. If something goes wrong, like just move on. Like people are always like, I try to get realtors to make videos. It's a really good way to, market and yourself and stuff. And they don't want to do it. And I'll tell them, like, look, here's the good news. If your video sucks, no one cares. They just swipe on to the next thing. Like, it's so quick. Like, they don't even think twice about it. You're putting all this pressure on you. Like, if you could make the worst video in the world and nobody would care, they would literally just swipe right the next
better
thing.
than no video.
Go on to the next thing. Yeah. And so it's like, you can't really screw it up because just the practice of doing, I mean, my first podcast, bro, I had, oh my gosh, like it was literally, I was doing a podcast and I had these 2 high school kids like holding boom mics and videos. And I was paying pretty good to have it done, but I didn't know what I was doing. Audio was horrible, but I ran out of questions like 12 minutes in. I don't know what to ask. And the kids that were doing the audio video, their dad was there, and he starts asking questions from like behind the camera because he can tell I'm like stuck. And I'm like, I didn't think I could just stop. Me like, dude, shut the hell up for a second. But it was just so bizarre. And it was horrible. I mean, this was literally my first one I did. I think it was like the 4th or 5th one I released. But my point was, you got to start. You got to just do it, Like I was so bad. And now I'm interviewing Andy Frisell and Grant Cardone and anybody I want to get on the podcast, basically. But it started with that. Like it was so embarrassing. It was so bad. But it just, you got to start.
Yeah, you got to start. You got to do it. Hopefully I can have Andy on one day. That'd be pretty sweet. Because speaking of like Liberty and guys who are just not afraid to just speak their minds and just do it, that man is just a force of nature.
Yeah, and I think something that Andy's tapped into and something that I've kind of learned is the most attractive quality you can have is to be unapologetically whoever you are. Like, just own it. Like, be you. Yeah. Like, quit worrying what other people are thinking. Quit worrying who's not going to like you, because everything you say, you're going to polarize people. And so, find your own voice. Be authentically you. And then you don't have to worry about it. And here's the worst part. Like, if you're not being authentic, if you're not putting out the message that's truly you, you don't know who truly loves you anyway, because they don't even know you. If you're not being honest with your spouse, like you don't even know if your spouse loves you. If you're not being honest with your friends, you don't even know if your friends really like you, because they don't know the real you. And so just be authentically you, and then you'll find your people. And if they don't like you, at least you know.
I think there's something to that. Just well, obviously there's something to that. And Jimmy, like you're on to something, right? And which is a selfish reason for having these, wanting to have these conversations, is because I do feel like there's just so much to be gleaned from people who are just living their best lives. And I was listening to your podcast that you released yesterday, and you had an investment that went awry, and you lost 27 million, wasn't it?
In one day I lost over 20 million. It was like 21 million. 21
million. And how did that affect you? Was that like devastating?
No, what I talked about on the podcast was, it was interesting because, I put this money in 5 years earlier. I put in my whole life savings. It was $500,000 was everything I had at the time. I borrowed the last 70 grand of it to make that happen. And, this company, it looked like it was doing well, but you never know. And then all of a sudden, make a little bit of, the valuation goes up, and then it went public. And in one day, I went from my $500,000, basically went to over 30 million. And it was just crazy. But my money was locked up. The stock was locked up, so I couldn't sell it or anything, right? Yeah. And the company was Nikola Motors, and everybody that's followed that story knows they had a lot of negative news hit. And the day that is called the Hindenburg Report hit, it crashed the stock. And I think I lost, I think I did the math, I'm pretty sure it was like $21 million in one day. And you're just like, or maybe it was over a course of like a couple, whatever, but it was a short span period. But the day that the Hindenburg Report, it crashed the stock. And I lost a huge amount of money. And I remember just sitting there. I was hunting with my buddies. We were in Texas. We were hunting wild pigs out of a helicopter, me, Aaron Wagner, and a couple other buddies. And and it was one of the funnest days I've ever had. It was just such a good day. And I remember Aaron, and it was actually with my financial planner, was the guy that put the trip together, this guy named Michael. And we're sitting there, and he probably had a worse day than me because he was going to manage the money. But but I was like, to me, it was like I had this opportunity when I had the 30 million. There was a couple months period there where it was fluctuating between 30 and 25, whatever it was, it was a lot of money. It was enough money that I wasn't gonna have to worry about
funny
it.
Money, yeah.
You're like done worrying about money.
Yeah.
And I had the experience where I got to go, wow, like, all right, what am I going to do next? And so for a couple months, I was really putting a lot of time and effort into thinking about this. And I concluded, like, I couldn't think of what I wanted to do next. It was really hard. I realized I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. The only thing I wanted to change is I wanted to do this coaching program that I'm now doing, right? Mm-hmm. It was like, and I was already putting this into play, so it wasn't like one day I'm going to do that. It was like, the only thing I want to do is I want to be doing more coaching and some of that stuff. But otherwise, I was living the exact life I wanted to have. And so when the money was lost, in a very short amount of time, it didn't affect me at all. I mean, that day I had just as good a day that day as I'd had the day before, and it was like it literally did not affect me because I knew I was doing exactly what I was going to do. And if I was supposed to have that money, I'd have the money. And ultimately, I realized, like, you know what? That wasn't how I was going to make my tens of millions of dollars. But it was cool, man. So it's like to be able to go through that, to ride that roller coaster, and to be able to have the experience of having that money and then losing it. And I didn't get it. I didn't get left with zero, so that probably helped a lot. But at the end of the day, I mean, you haven't lived till you've ridden the Nikola Motors roller coaster. And so it was fun, man. It was just a life experience I'm grateful that I got to have because it really showed me that I was on the path I should be on.
Yeah. Wow. And that's, I mean, I can't even comprehend, right? I've lost a few $1,000s in the stock market, but to get into the millions and then tens of millions, that's pretty incomprehensible right now. Maybe I'll be there one day. That'd be pretty sweet. Maybe not losing it. I don't think that would be sweet. But then if you're living your best life, then
it doesn't matter, man. You just go earn it again,
Yeah. So, well, speaking of being out of questions, I had so many things kind of rattling around in my brain of what I wanted to ask you. But I guess going back real quickly to what you said is do something uncomfortable every day. Do something that makes you uncomfortable every day. And you mentioned briefly how you felt like you had a connection with the sharks. And I've never had a connection with sharks before.
You've never swam with them in the open water, though.
Or never stared down a gorilla or anything like that. But that's not something that someone who's maybe uncomfortable with themselves would be comfortable with saying. Is that, I have a connection with this tree, or I have a connection with this shark, or I have a connection with Nate, whatever it is. Like, I think we inhibit ourselves and kind of how we're authentically feeling in a lot of ways, because we don't want to be judged, or we don't want to, other people think, oh, that guy is just like super weird. But then you just dropped it like casually. Yeah, I had a connection with a tiger shark.
That's not weird to me. I did have a connection with the shark, and it was beautiful. I don't really care what anyone else thinks because I was the one that experienced it.
Yeah. Well, and so and there's no denying that, right? There's nothing that I can say that would change that.
Right.
And so, but I think that really dives into, I think who we are as people in a lot of ways. Like we're scared of people judging us. We're scared of people. If we're afraid to act, like a lot of that, if we're afraid to do something to make ourselves uncomfortable, whether it's talking to the hottest girl on campus, multiple times and just fearing that rejection, or whether it's starting a business or making an investment, whatever it is, like we're scared. We're scared of being judged, or we're scared of failing. Yeah. And you talk about in your book, about being in the cave and then emerging from the cave. I think we've all had moments, and if we haven't, it's coming, where we feel like we're cowering in a corner, or there's nothing else to do. Like we're backed into a corner. There's nothing else to do, except for just like maybe take the next breath, or maybe take the next step, or maybe just get out of bed, because like things can be so dark and so much pain, or whatever it is that we're trying to avoid or trying to hide from. But I think one of the ways we heal, and you mentioned this in your book as well, is just like get to work, just do the work, and you will overcome whatever it is that you're feeling by getting to work. And there's something about that with contribution and creating and serving that I think there's really a healing aspect to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, people talk a lot, nowadays it's very popular to talk about depression and things like that. And I do, very sensitive to the topic or whatever. It's a real thing. But I think, I don't know, at least 2/3 or 3/4 of the people that think they're depressed, they really just aren't taking care of themselves. Like eat better, go outside, exercise, make phone calls, whatever you want, give it away. If you want some people to, I've had friends call me, they're like, dude, nobody calls me. I'm like, when was the last time you picked up the phone and called someone?
Yeah.
Like you can do that. Like you can create that interaction. It's like this need to, but I just think most people aren't taking care of themselves a lot of times. Unfortunately, they're not doing the things that make you happy. They're not doing the things that get you out of a depressed state. And so, I think that's a really good place for people to look. And like, if you're feeling bad or you're feeling down, it is that first step though. Like go walk outside, go call somebody, go just walk around the supermarket and smile at people. Like literally just go do something, and I don't know. I think that's the way that you start that snowball of getting yourself into momentum where a lot of things start working for you as opposed to against you.
Yeah. And what would you say is like your background or your belief system on being able to make those conclusions and then to go do it? Like, did you have, I guess, from childhood or like mentors, or what was it that kind of gave you that mentality where it was like, hey, we're doing and there's nothing else?
I had parents that made me do things that I didn't want to do. Like, like I knew I was going to do a thing where I was going to get my ass kicked. So I did that thing. They did a great job of instilling fear and love, honestly. And so from a young age, I was doing things that, sometimes I didn't want to do, but then you do it and you're excited. And then, I remember when I was in school, probably 2nd or 3rd grade, and we were doing like passing the bucket around for sub for Santa or something, and we all put a quarter in or whatever we had, a dime or $1, the rich kid, And I remember I went home, and I think in my whole savings I had like $10, and I put it in there, and I remember I felt so good, and then I was so bugged after myself because I didn't have any money, and then I was like, but then I remembered how good it felt, and then I was happy again. But you start doing those things, and you have those experiences, and then I'm going to give up 2 years of my life to go serve people. And I was so happy. It was so rewarding. I was so happy when I was on my mission because you're all day long, even though all you do is work. I mean, you are working so hard and you live off $75 a month. My floors were concrete. If, you're lucky if you got a hot shower half the time. It was, you sacrifice, but I was so happy. And I realized that like happiness comes in the service of others. And as I've had the opportunity to do a lot of things for myself over the years, there's only so much joy you get in doing it for yourself. Then you start doing it for other people, and you take people to this event or this thing, or you give them this experience and you see how it lights them up. And it's so much more rewarding. And ultimately it's like, it becomes kind of addicting to do good. Like you want to do the selfishly to feel good, but you just know how much good it does. And so I think that's the key is, again, going back to, whatever you want, give it away. Like if you want to feel that way, if you want to be more in that kind of a place, just do it. Just start doing little things, and those things add up. You start feeling good and you do more and more, and ultimately that's the kind of person you become.
Yeah, well, and I want to get so we become what we do essentially, right? Those verbs, like, and so but I kind of want to get a little meta, if you will, for a little bit. So there is a scriptural basis to this podcast and the name of the podcast, and I can't remember exactly where the scripture is, but it's in the New Testament, and it says, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is also liberty." And there's another scripture, and this one's in James chapter 1, where it talks about those who live in the perfect law of liberty, essentially remember who they are. Like that's their identity is those who are living in the law of liberty. Like they remember who they are as people. And so I guess I'm trying to tie that back into being our authentic selves, because when you have an impression, or you have, something that you feel like you should do and you don't do it, like there's really, that's coming from a certain place, right? That's coming from, whatever it is, our connection to the universe,
sure.
Or
God.
or God, however you view God. And I think that's how we can actually try to live our lives, where we're more and more free as we follow those impressions, those messages from the universe. But just to kind of wrap things up, so because I feel like I could talk to you all day.
I appreciate it, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome, and it's a great studio. But what would you say is, like, because you talk about opportunity, you talk about risk, you talk about the American dream, and some of your other podcasts, and you talk about just everything's available to us if we just act. But what would you say maybe espouses, or what is your idea of what the American dream is, and how we can take advantage of the opportunities that America has?
No, it's a good way to wrap it up. It's the American dream, it's been confused over the last couple of years as meaning equal outcome, and it was never that. What the American dream is to me is equal opportunity. It's still harder for some people than others. Like, we're not all starting the race at the same place. We're not. But that being said, there's all sorts of different kind of privilege that exists. Athletes, the privilege they have, beautiful women, the privilege they have, your race and skin color still matters, right? Neighborhood you grow up in, there's these different privileges we have. But the American dream is this: every single one of us has the opportunity, if we want, to make whatever we want out of our lives. Like, we have the chance to build whatever it is that we're trying to do. I can't go be an NFL football player. That's not what that means. What it means is, if I want to, I can build myself a beautiful life. We all have enough liberty here. We have enough freedom here. We have enough opportunity here in the United States. And we won't get equal outcome, but we have an equal opportunity to go build a special life. I think that's what the American dream is. I think that's what makes America special. And, I've been to 84 countries, having been all over the world, America still stands for that to the whole world. It's the reason when they have protests in Hong Kong or Africa or wherever it might be, they fly the American flag, because it stands for freedom. It stands for that opportunity. And people get that haven't been born here. I think a lot of people born in the United States, and haven't really experienced life very much, they take advantage, or they just don't understand the true liberty that we have, the true opportunity that we have here in the United States. And so they start looking for problems left and right. But the people that come here from other regimes or from other places, go talk to some of these, immigrants. They're so beautiful to talk to. I've had several on my podcast because they just get it. They understand what it means to be in America and to have that freedom. So that to me is the American dream, man.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. And really, just kind of nothing that I can add to that, because that sums it up. But it's also really reflective of what you're saying and your coaching program. We are the they. Like, there's we give up our liberty, we give up our opportunity if we're not taking action ourselves, if we're not doing ourselves. And so so take that opportunity, take it. It's yours to take. So appreciate you having you on the podcast, man. Appreciate
Love it,
your
man.
time.
Keep up the good work, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we'll see where it goes.
Take care.
You bet.